From KUNC and the NPR network, this is In The NoCo. I'm Erin O'Toole. It has been a tough winter for skiers and snowboarders in Colorado. And that's also rippling through the local economy of nearby resort towns. Workers in bars and restaurants, backcountry gear shops, and hotels that depend on busy ski seasons are feeling the pinch. Many businesses are coping by cutting employee hours, not hiring some seasonal workers, or just spending less in general. Journalist Steve Knopper wrote in 5280 magazine about the economic ripple effects that this low snow season is having beyond the ski resorts. His article was a snapshot of how a historically dry year is affecting the lives of the people who live and work in Colorado's mountain towns. Steve joined me to talk about what he learned and why he wanted to write this particular story now.
Generally, I write for 5280 about stories involving music. In this particular case, my editor needed somebody to talk to people who are in ski towns, who are not, the resorts, which I think a lot of other publications have covered, but more about like the entire local economy. And I went up and I went to Breck, I went to Frisco, and I talked to people who work at ski shops. I talked to people who work at bars, bookstores, et cetera, et cetera. And it turned out that they were feeling, as you just said, they were feeling the pinch of this.
You spent time with workers and business owners in several mountain towns, including Aidan Lyons, who helps run Breeze Ski Rentals in Frisco. He told you business is slow because tourists are skiing elsewhere. They're skiing in places like Vermont this season instead. How is he keeping the business going?
Yeah, Aidan was I went up on the day after President's Day weekend, and Aidan was there by himself. And he was the only person in the entire store. It's a huge store, Frisco Ski Rentals in Frisco. And there were a couple people who came in and out and dropped off their boots, but it was just striking at how quiet it was. And I think I mentioned in the story, he was spending most of his time reading a book that day. Yeah. So, it was pretty low traffic and uneventful there.
Does he worry about the business if next season is bad too?
I think Aidan himself was not super worried because he is the only guy who works at the store usually. So I think that he feels like he has job security, which I'm sure is true. But yeah, I mean, many people throughout all the ski towns that I talk to are very worried about next season. This season is an outlier, which has happened in history. We've had low snow ski seasons over the history of ski resorts.
Sure.
And people have weathered that pretty well. But if this is like a climate change phenomenon, which much evidence points to, and if this is going to happen again next year or for many more years in the future, then that is sort of existential, right? That means that the resorts are going to have to really pay attention to their entire business model. And that's going to affect a lot of things. And it'll just be one of many, many things that are impacted by the grander picture of climate change.
Sure. Now, you also talked with Scotty Keys. He's a bartender at Highside Brewing in Breckenridge, which has seen fewer customers. He talked about how he is actually snowboarding less. How is that affecting the allure, Steve, of living and working in a ski town?
Yeah, I mean, in Breckenridge in particular, which is where I spent most of the time for this story, it seems like the low snowfall has affected the high up bowls, which are the Black Diamond ski runs. So the really difficult ones, the really expert skiers. And he's one of those guys, although he's a snowboarder. And so, you try to do the runs that you really enjoy that are more difficult and challenging and technical, and there's no snow. So it's just all dirt. So that's a problem. Now, will that have a greater impact on the local economy? The answer to that is slightly more mixed because a lot of people don't go up to Breckenridge and other ski resorts just to ski the Black Diamond runs. They have kids, their families, and they do the green runs or the blue runs or whatever. And so they're still kind of participating in the local economy and going to restaurants and stores and bars and so forth.
Okay.
So the impact is not overwhelmingly terrible. It's not sort of catastrophic yet.
Sounds like maybe that's almost a silver lining of this for some of the local businesses in town.
Yeah.
You also talked with the manager of a bookstore in Steamboat, Megan Merton, who is seeing seasonal workers from the resort apply for retail jobs. What stood out to you about what Megan has seen this winter?
What Megan said is that there have been a lot of local layoffs. And so people, they're not struggling necessarily so much, because what's happening is that vacationing customers are still coming to town and still doing the ski runs that they can do, and they're spending a lot of time downtown instead of on the runs. So she said they had a record-breaking President's Day, for example. So in her case, it was kind of a silver lining in that there was more traffic. But, the fact that the ski season snowfall was so low is something in the long term that she's worried about. They're not hiring as many seasonal workers because they're concerned about the future.
Steve, you note that many workers in Colorado ski towns already face high housing costs and living costs, even in a good year. Did you talk to anyone who said this winter has been the last straw and they're looking to leave?
No, most people that I talked to were sort of, so far this is what everybody hopes will be a blip. This is just one bad season, bad stuff happened. They can weather this. They can move on to next year. Nobody's changing their entire work life based on this. But it is worrisome. If this happens next year, I think you're going to see a lot more panic. You're going to see a lot more decisions made that will affect people and people changing their decisions. And if it lasts a long time, which climate change certainly suggests is a possibility, then I think you start to see like the whole phenomenon of quote unquote ski bums is something that may not be sustainable anymore. But I'm not expert enough in climate change to know whether or not that's a possibility.
I think even the experts don't know what's going to happen in the future. So
hard to predict the future. Yes.
Steve Knopper reported in 5280 magazine about the impact of this season's dismal snowpack on business owners and workers in Colorado ski towns. We'll drop a link to his article in the show notes and at KUNC.org. And hey, I want to remind you that In The NoCo is hosting its first ever live event later this month in Fort Collins. This dry, warm winter that we're coming out of is stressful for your yard, garden, and trees. So on April 23rd, we're presenting a special live episode of In The NoCo with experts from the CSU Extension. We'll talk about how to make your plants healthy and your landscape sustainable. It's an evening of science and fun, and you're invited. Find the details and get tickets in our show notes and at KUNC.org. That's it today for In The NoCo. I'm Erin O'Toole. Thanks so much for listening.